It is that time of the year when we do head coaching hiring grades. How about that? For 2025 hiring cycle, that's one of the topics we're covering here today on the show. Of course, this is the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 160, here on this January 29th, 2026, high atop a yet still chilly and frozen Jacksonville, Florida. Have on good authority, as we do the old paper pop here, that there could be some snow for some of us, or at least some wintry precipitation potentially for someone in the state of Florida, whether it be, us here in northeastern Florida or potentially in the Gulf Coast area near Tampa. Yes, I did see the Tampa's National Weather Service bringing it up. A lot of folks are starting to bring it up, so don't be surprised if you're up late. If you're in the state of Florida, whether it's Tampa or even here in like the Jacksonville area, don't be surprised if you're up late at night, Saturday night into Sunday morning, to see some white stuff flying around out there due to the current weather situation. Nice little weather system there moving along the eastern seaboard, bringing a lot of folks from snow to our north, and potentially for us in Florida. How about that? Whom should have thunk that? Back at the or like several months ago, we'd be getting talking about winter precipitation here in Jacksonville. Of course, it is still cold here, even without, or it still will be cold here even without the wintry participation or the wintry weather, if you will. The precipitation will still be pretty cold. Anyway, loaded show for you guys today. Again, as I mentioned on the top, head coaching hiring grades for this past cycle. A lot of thoughts on these coaches as the coaching carousel has now winded down. Thoughts on Bill Belichick, not necessarily his pro football Hall of Fame stuff, but just his future at UNC, sort of what happened, at least what I think is happening there. And of course, we'll go over spicy predictions. Probably going to be another show where we get below an hour, kind of around that time of the year where we do these shorter form shows, not like long, like hour-long shows that we do like during the hype of the college ball, like when the games are going on, like game weeks and stuff. So it might be a shorter show, but who knows? We may be pushing an hour or not. We'll see. But if you are new here, we cover college ball. This is a college ball show. We dive into some other stuff too, some pop culture stuff, Marvel news, some Star Wars news, Tampa Bay Buccaneers news. Though some of those, to a certain extent, have been moved over to the extra pod, which we try to do once a week. We'll try to get one cranked out tomorrow. I think tomorrow potentially. And so that's where those topics are. We'll still bring those up on the main show, the show you see live here on YouTube and on Spotify, recorded. But those that moved over to the extra pod, that's more like a Q&A mailbag type show we do once a week. So if you're looking for that stuff specifically on a more regular basis, that's real fun. But this show, mostly college ball, and that's what we're talking about here today. So if you are new here, yes, there's no games going on. Yes, the national title game was, long past now. You can still subscribe to the channel. Again, we have a lot of things to discuss, from now all the way until when the games kick off again in late August. We have, fall camp, going for prediction season, and then we have spring practice and whatnot. A lot of things to get excited about for the show. We're not going anywhere either. Like God forbid I have some sort of medical issue. We're still doing the show, even if we're going on vacation and whatnot, which may or may not happen during the summer. I did last year. We'll have shows as be pre-recorded, won't be live. So at least on YouTube, on Spotify, it doesn't matter. You guys always get shows recorded or not live. Now, speaking of Spotify, last show not be able to be uploaded. Try to this morning, wasn't working. So unfortunately, the Spotify folks, you missed the last show, episode 159. But hopefully this show will be a little bit different. You'll be able to actually listen to it over there. So that show is unfortunately missing. Unfortunately, the audio file and Spotify weren't working necessarily. But I was find on my computer while listening to it. So I don't know, it must be a Spotify issue. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get into the show here. Again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Follow me on the X, Twitter, Instagram. We have an Instagram account as well. I haven't used it in a while, but have it on good authority. We have some things we're thinking about in terms of what we could be using it for in the future. Anyway, let's get into the show here. Head coaching grades 2025, the coaching cycle this past fall was pretty active. A lot of major coaches getting moved around. Very, very much so a significant head coaching cycle. It seems like we'll be getting those every 3 years or so. It looks like the last one was 2021. So here we are again with another pretty significant, even more significant in my opinion, but a lot of the same jobs are opening up back then are opening up now. So, or were open this past fall, and they've been since filled. All of them have been filled, and I don't suspect we'll have any major changes unless God forbid, some sort of like scandal breaks out. And yeah, we'll just go through the major ones. I'm not doing all of them. We're not doing like the G5s and some of the other coaching hires that were not necessarily mainstream ones. We're just doing the mainstream, like big ones that a lot of folks are kind of worried about, more or less worried about. First one up here, John Summerall at UF goes from Tulane to UF. I give this one an A+, just from the I know there's a lot of folks who, and we talked about this a little bit when the hire was made. A lot of folks in the whole Billy Napier comparison. Oh, it's another G5 coach from Louisiana coming to Florida, and oh, he's gonna fail just like Billy did and whatnot. I'll just tell you this: I've never met John Summerall before. I never talked to him personally, but from what I can tell from interviews and just the way folks talk about him, he is not Billy Napier. Like Billy Napier, in the words of Bud Elliott, those guys over at Cover 3, they second guessed that. Like they kind of had a feeling that was not going to go the way folks thought it would. Though they still, they were quiet about it up front. They didn't like button those guys in just like, smear the guy. No, they gave him his chances, but if I do recall when the hire was made, there was some red flags, right? And unfortunately, that has sort of smeared this hire. I don't think that should be the case. I think John Summerall could be a rock star in Florida. Just the way he does things. Again, I've never talked to him before personally. None of these guys never talked to him before personally, but I listened to them obviously through interviews and press conferences and stuff like that. And from what I have heard, from other industry insiders, if you will, college football insiders, not the show on CBS Sports, but just insiders in general, I think Summerall, from what I have heard, he's going to kill it there in Florida. I think just his recruiting style, his style of coaching, him being a not a Muschamp clone, but a defensive-minded coach that respects offense. He brings in Buster Faulkner from Georgia Tech. I think that might be the most underrated coaching assistant coach hiring of the cycle, in my opinion. He brings him in. Again, he's someone who respects offense, so he's a defensive-minded coach. So, again, he's not a Bo Muschamp clone who doesn't give a shit about the offense and runs whatever, I don't know, like whatever offense wants to wants to run, and it's usually doesn't turn out pretty well. You're not getting that with him. And the same kind of applied to Bill Napier, too. Bill Napier thought he was a good play caller. Wasn't that. That ended up being his downfall there at UF. I don't think you're getting out of John Summerall. John Summerall, to me, from an organizational standpoint, CEO standpoint, this to me could be a rock star hire for Florida. Look, it could fail spectacularly, right? A lot of folks thought Bill Napier was going to work out at Florida. Maybe not the majority, but a lot of folks thought it was going to work out. A lot of folks thought that Hugh Freeze work out at Auburn. A lot of folks thought that, someone like Scott Frost over at Nebraska was going to work out. Didn't work out. So, in terms of the whole, and same thing against about Brian Kelly at LSU. So there's a lot of hires that were considered the perfect hire. Ended up being not so perfect, and they ended up, there was a coaching change eventually. So that's kind of like a caveat for all these coaching grades, but this one I gave just on the surface. I know he hasn't coached any games yet, and we're still like half a year away from that happening, or from that happening, for us seeing that what the Summerall era is going to look like. But just on the surface, based on your resume, it's an A+. Not to mention, too, something that I do agree with Bud Elliott in terms of the criteria for a good coach. Summerall does not fall on the whole G5 or a lower P4 coach riding a superstar quarterback. I agree with Bud. When that happens, when somebody's like hot, like for example, Gus Malzahn at Auburn, right? Malzahn was known for coaching Cam Newton at Auburn. That's an example of G5 head coach or G5 head coach who was a coach in the G5 or a coordinator in the P4 at a P4 job, riding a superstar QB. That's a red flag. And I think we've seen with someone like Malzahn, that's clear that is not just because you coached the Heisman Trophy winner does not mean you are necessarily going to guarantee success. Now, it may work for some coaches, right? Like Lincoln Riley's, kind of the what's the quote or what's the term? The the exception to the rule of that. Malzahn is the perfect example of that, right? Riding a superstar QB, gets a major job. Yes, he got fooled into the whole, microwaving your way to a 1 year or to a year one success. You ended up seeing what happened afterwards. So the Summerall does not fit that whole writing a superstar QB, whether you're a G5 coach or a lower tier P4 coach coordinator. So he doesn't fit that mold, which is good. He's won with pretty insufficient quarterback play. So that is good if you're a Florida fan, that you're not bringing in someone who is only known for coaching superstar QBs. That's fine, especially at maybe, for some people, right, again, like Lincoln Riley, someone maybe like a Lane Kiffin, but for most coaches, that's usually a pretty significant red flag. So I like that for Summerall. Florida, I think he's going to do great there. I think a lot of the also procedural stuff on the field, not necessarily behind the scenes stuff. Again, from what I've heard from other folks like Josh Payton and others, Payton's been there multiple times, and he said, after he's visited Billy back a couple years ago, that place in terms of the operational stuff, strength and conditioning, nutrition, recruiting, it's fun. It was fun. There was no problems with that. It was just the on-field stuff, and that is where things kind of, began to collapse, if you will. So John Sturmall, again, the one on the surface. Again, these are just on the surface coaching grading hires or grade hires, coach hiring grades. On the surface, A+. Next one, Lane Kiffin, A. I think solid A. Not that I think of him less than or John Summerall, is just in terms of the hire, an A. It's kind of what you would expect at LSU. Go, big name hunting. You did it with Brian Kelly, someone who's more not traditionally so known as a offensive savant. Obviously, schools usually try to go the opposite direction. Doesn't happen all the time, like we saw of UF, at least to a certain extent. But even that was kind of opposite of Bill Napier. But anyway, Lane Kiffin, definitely the opposite of Brian Kelly. I think Lane, with his portal class, deserves an A clearly. He's done a pretty good job of building that team up with the portal additions, right? You get your new quarterback and Sam Levitt. Hopefully, again, he dealt with that injury back during the season last year. Hopefully, he's ready to go. I think them going after Damon Williams too kind of makes you wonder. There may have been some concern there with injury stuff, but we have spring to talk about that. But I think this is an A. Yeah, I think if you look at LSU and their expectations, got a coach who has won at several places that are not necessarily big programs. He's won there, right? Turn around FAU, turn around Ole Miss. Now, the only thing that would prevent Lincoln from doing the whole, A+ and him just being an A is, well, it's not a. I've seen people personally in my life that brought this up, but it is something that you do need to bring up, is that he has failed at all the big jobs he's had previously, like the big, like top 20, top 15-ish jobs, right, in college football. He had one Tennessee. I'm not going to say he failed at Tennessee, but it was kind of the classic. He had success on the field, but behind the scenes, it was a bit of a, So that one, kind of yes and no. There were success and some failures. Now for USC, yeah, there was a lot of failures here, for multiple reasons. Now, if you want to stick to the on the field stuff, yeah, very consistent. A lot of mishandling of certain things. They were, if you don't remember, if you're too young, back in 2012, they were the number one team in the country, and I believe they were the last team to be ranked that high, at least the number one. Now, I know folks will bring up Penn State, but to be at least before maybe this year's Penn State team, USC was the last team to be number one or like top 3 in the country, to go from their preseason all the way to being unranked at the end of the year. That's very rare to do. And unfortunately for Lane Kiffin on his resume, that's on there. I think a lot of folks still remember that to this day. So that is a bit of a nervousness there, given that, those do exist, and not to mention his NFL ventures there at the Raiders for like a year and a half. But besides all of that, I think with Lane Kiffin, he has improved on the field. Now, if you want to do the behind-the-scenes stuff, yeah, he's still clowning and trolling and whatnot. Personally, to me, it's like whatever. Like, as long as you're winning at places, I think folks will deal with it. I think to a certain extent, some folks who are a little bit more, staunch and more thinking of college football on like the pro game level or at least the pro mindset, maybe that's where you'll piss some people off. But to me, it's like whatever. Like, he's winning at all these places, at least in his more recent coaching stops. So that's fine with me. But again, I think with LSU, Evan has been noted a lot. Besides, outside of Brian Kelly, the last few coaches since 2000 who have been there, besides BK, have all won national titles. Nick Saban, obviously the GOAT. You have Les Miles, a decent head coach. Not like the greatest of all time. But he's not no slouch either, but not necessarily some sort of like legendary coach. Yeah, that Orgeron. So what that tells you is that even if the crappiest head coach ever win a national championship, either Gene Chizik or Ed Orgeron, pick one. probably would go Ed Orgeron. I don't know. I think they're both about the same, even though I will give Ed Orgeron some credit. He did have like a 10-win season before, and then Chiswick did not have that. But anyway, even one of the crappiest head coaches ever, in Ed Orgeron, won a national title at LSU. I think a lot of folks will say, well, he understood at LSU, or you understood at LSU and his connections to Louisiana and whatnot. That helps. But yeah, in terms of what Lane Kiffin has already done so far, right? Getting bringing in the transfer portal, keeping around Blake Baker, who did some good stuff for them last year at the defensive coordinator position. That's a huge plus in my opinion. So Lane is an A. Yes, some of the past stuff, both early college career as a head coach and then some of the NFL stuff, kind of weighs it down a little bit. But on the surface, so this could easily been an A plus. But I kind of did that too, where I put it as an A instead of an A plus to kind of make it less repetitive. But anyway, could have easily been an A plus. Next one, obviously an A plus. Alex Galesh. I love this hire for Auburn. In terms of the offensive style, love it. Always been a big fan of that veer and shoot, Baylor Briles stuff. Yes, I do acknowledge the whole off the field stuff of Art Briles, but on the field with him as a coach and his offensive style, that type of offense, I love it. I think for Auburn, you're getting for the first time probably in over 10 years, you're going to get an actual functioning offense, which is a breath of fresh air. Now, the only thing here that even me, I've been concerned about this is the loss of talent, right? You lose a Cam Coleman. You lose a lot of sort of the trappings on the tree, if you will, that Hugh Freeze got in. And, give credit to Hugh where you can. Is like, yes, he did elevate the talent, but you can also make the argument that, well, the talent that was there didn't necessarily win you a lot of ball games. That is true. And also kind of understand where this was coming from. And also acknowledging what Cole Kubiak has said that, hey, a lot of those rumors about those guys being, highly flawed characters are probably true. And, is what it is. And I think of Auburn, to anyone especially like me, who weeks ago was concerned, the thing you can be, I guess, rest assured about, and this is something I kind of had to remind myself about, is that this offense that Galesh is running, right, the veer and shoot stuff that obviously his mentor Heupel is running at Tennessee, the same thing, and even Lane at LSU, you don't necessarily need high-level elite quarterback talent, wide receiver talent, or any talent, period, to run that offense. You do not. It's very simple to learn, albeit it's very secretive. So, you don't need a Cam Coleman to be your best receiver. It's nice to have, but it's not required, right? Maybe required under other offenses, right? Which had previously a few threes, but with Galesh, you don't need that. And I think of Auburn, the biggest upgrade you could have had out of all the things with the transfer portal tournament you've had, the biggest upgrade you got was that quarterback, Byron Brown. Dual threat guy, can run around, very athletic. I think Auburn could. I know weeks ago I mentioned that, I was concerned about, hey, if they don't address certain things in the portal, this might be a very tough year for them. That's still a possibility. And when we get to the record projections, you're going to see, I can already kind of tell you, you're going to see a very strange best case, worst case, and most reasonable. A very broad, terms of range of possibilities there. Very, very dramatic, if you will, in terms of how different each section is going to be. It's not going to be very closely contied just because how volatile Auburn is right now. But if things do click there, and if the talent they bring in is good enough to run this offense, which I'm assuming it is, they could pop off. Now, it could go really bad, but it could also do really, really well. So it's Auburn, definitely, as per usual, it's going to be a very volatile team. But in terms of the higher style of offense, him keeping DJ Durkin, kind of like what Lane did with Blake Baker, both blessing and curse. Blessing in terms of you're keeping the language around with the defense, you're keeping around someone who knows the roster or your new previous players. But the curse, especially of Auburn, is that, look, DJ was someone who wanted to be the coach, interim coach. And that was made very clear, not just me, but other folks, that the reason why they made the move on Hugh Freeze so late, kind of, if you will, behind other programs, is that they didn't want DJ Durkin to get a long enough runway to get that job. Even though it turns out that was not really the case, and it was in line to get that job anyway, or at least one and still in the running. There might be some, kind of some awkwardness there, some kind of weird vibes. So far, so good, and I think DJ still being there has actually helped out a little bit in terms of potentially getting rid of some, players that, again, like your Cam Colemans of the world and some other folks that maybe had some issues off the field in terms of either personality or some other issues. But Yeah, I think Alex Glesh at Auburn, in terms of getting a facelift offensively, A plus in my opinion. Clearly an A plus. The next one, over A plus. Again, I'm not trying to sound repetitive here because trust me, there's some other hires here that I'm not totally high on necessarily. Not that I hate the coaches, just that I don't know about them yet. But this next one is an A plus for sure. James Franklin to Virginia Tech. This is a huge one for them. You guys want to know the last time Virginia Tech won 10 or more games? Josh Pate style pair pop was back in 2016. That was by the way, my freshman year of high school. So about 10 years ago, which is insane to think about. It's been a decade since my freshman year in high school. I'm getting old. Anyway, so I was a freshman in high school, and that was, what's his name? Justin Fuente, the former head coach of Memphis. That was his first year there. He had what was his name? Gerard Evans, I believe, was a quarterback. That's who it was. The last name was Evans, but yeah, he was some dual threat guy. It was pretty good. But I think I remember Auburn was after him too for some reason back when, like in the very, very, very early days of the transfer portal. I think it wasn't even just a pure transfer. It was a JC junior college guy. But anyway, yeah, that's how long ago that was when Virginia Tech last won 10 or more games. So long ago, that was with the like 2 coaching regimes ago. That's how long ago that was. So it's been a while. So I'm trying to say, kind of like Stain, their song. Been a while. But I think this is a good hire for Virginia Tech. Very good hire. Very interesting to see what this looks like in his first year there with Franklin. I think his organizational skills, his ability to build a program, his history in recruiting that region, particularly the Carolinas and Virginia, the state of Virginia itself, that's a huge get. I mean, if you remember during his time at Penn State, Franklin, I mean, he dominated not only the state of Pennsylvania, but also even to a more certain extent, Virginia. I mean, his last few classes, all this, like 90% of their players are from the state of Virginia. Very, very interesting. So, I mean, if you're, schools like South Carolina, UNC, we'll talk about them later, Virginia, I mean, this is a hire that you have to be very worried about in terms of recruiting wise. And obviously, not all those schools play Virginia Tech, obviously South Carolina, but at least on a regular basis. But you recruit against them, right? And for the last couple of years, you've had your way with them, among other schools. And with him being there, James Franklin, and again, his organizational skills, him being a very good CEO, again, much like Billy Napier at Florida, Franklin at Penn State, his, in terms of the issues there, were not necessarily behind the scenes stuff. It wasn't like organizational stuff or recruiting to a certain extent or nutrition, strength and conditioning. It was none of that stuff. It was sort of like Billy, just on the field stuff, and it ended up costing him his job there at Penn State. So now him going to Virginia Tech, again, to a program that is extremely desperate, much like Penn State. Now, branch outside the whole scandal stuff, but much like Penn State in terms of on the field struggles, former power from the 90s, and struggling up until this point. Very similar, if you will, in terms of that route. I mean, if you want to go, full picture off, it's not totally the same, but there's some similarities with Virginia Tech and Penn State before James got there. So that one, obviously, an A plus. And not to mention, too, obviously, James Franklin's one of my favorite coaches. And just when I've heard from him, doing interviews and stuff, never met him before, but it seems like a very interesting coach to talk to. It would be one that I would love to interview. Next one here, Ryan Silverfield from Memphis to Arkansas. Going the classic, Danny Cannell, C+. Okay. I know Arkansas, the words of Bud Elliott, take the checks, take the losses, just be lucky you're in the SEC and getting that money. Because otherwise, the fans would much rather you be in a different conference. I get all that. That is true for a lot of programs there, any bigger than at least in the Power 2. But yeah, Arkansas is a one-term contract type job. It's not a job that you really, see yourself coaching at there for multiple contracts. It's a one contract job. And I think for Silverfield, again, with all the obstacles, not to mention too, that's a school that doesn't necessarily show that they can go all in on football. They've shown that they want to go all in on other sport or athletic ventures. But even with all the struggles, I mean, I don't know. I kind of wonder how this will work out. I know a lot of the fans didn't like the hire. It's sort of that class. It's kind of like not classic, but kind of like a cliche top hire. It's like, oh, duh, of course, it's the guy that's literally not far away from the Arkansas border there in Memphis. It's the guy down the street at the local G5. But who knows? I mean, this guy could end up being a good coach there for Arkansas, right? And this could be one of those surprise situations where it just turns out well, right? I mean, I think with Arkansas, they've just they need to they need to at least be more consistent in terms of going to bowl games. I think that's what I think those fans would prefer to happen. I think given the way the SEC is currently structured with the new additions of OU and Texas, given now you're going to have, at least for the most part, more losses on your schedule than you had before, you just need to consistently get the bowl games, I think. And I think that's something that Silverfield knows that. And he's an adult. He's a big boy. He took the job. So I just don't know much about this one. This one I really don't know. So C+ for this one. Next one here, Penn State, Matt Campbell, A, solid A. If he's on A+ here, again, not to sound redundant in terms of all giving everyone A+, but this one I think give a solid A. He's a legend at Iowa State. Kind of like your previous coach was at Vanderbilt, James Franklin. Matt Campbell deserves a statue at Iowa State. He does. And I think a lot of folks are, going to look at what he's done the past few years and say, he had 2 really good years in 2020 and then 2024. But besides it's in a lot of 8-win seasons, that's the best stretch in Iowa State football. Like before that, they were going like 2 wins, 3 wins, like 0 wins, I think, one year. They are the Big 12 version of what Indiana was before Kirk Kennedy got there. It was very horrible. And then Matt Campbell comes in and swoops in from Toledo. And there they are, winning like 8 games or 7 or 8.5 games per year there. And a couple of blips on the radar when they won 10 or more games. When he had Brock Purdy, he's had, Rocco Becht, who's with him now at Penn State, along with 95% of the team from Iowa State last year. So just based on all of that, he deserves an A, bluntly, just based on that. The schedule, too, for this year for Matt Campbell sets up perfectly for him. It's a very manageable schedule. The schedules were released on Tuesday. We'll go over those along with the ACC schedules, I think, next week. We have more time, so I wanted to do this now before we forget. But the only reason why I didn't give it an A is just, it's only because I just don't know if he has all the input, or not input, all of the buy-in, if you will. There we go. Yeah, all the buy-in at Penn State. Just because of how bad the search went, right? You fire James Franklin, you sort of have the search kind of go along behind the scenes and then hear a lot about it, frankly, because other jobs opened up, particularly ones in the SEC opened up, kind of took all the air. Then when those got filled up, you start to realize, oh, Penn State's still open. Haven't hired anyone. Who are they going to hire? Well, Matt Campbell was sitting there the entire time, but it seems like they decided to go other directions, right? They went with the Kalani Sitake route. I personally believe they went to someone like maybe even Cliff Kingsbury to be potentially their next head coach. So I don't know. I just based on all that makes me fear that while yes, Matt Campbell is a good coach, he's a legend at Iowa State, moves over to Penn State, clearly a huge job upgrade, a huge resource upgrade. I just don't know if he has all the buy-in there because it wasn't their first choice. Clearly, that's obvious, right? And it's very clear he wasn't their first choice. And that's what I'm worried about with him. Besides all that, a terrific hire. Next one, let's see. Eric Morris, Oklahoma State, B+, G5 coach, bringing in, again, much like the previous guy we just mentioned, Matt Campbell, bringing in, 95% of his roster. Quarterback, running back is there. Oklahoma State, desperate need. Kind of like Arkansas, just to get to a bowl game, get some excitement built in there. We'll see. We'll see of this one. I know a lot of folks are doing the whole Kirk and Eddie comparison because that's now the most popular thing to do. Not everyone's Kirk and Eddie. Eric Morris is just Eric Morris, right? Different philosophy, different coaching style. He is a different man. And his style, air raid system, consistent with Oklahoma State they've had before. It could be fun. Big 12 for the most part. There's no real powerful team there. Though like Texas Tech, as long as Cody Campbell's still injecting money into their they're going to be pretty good consistently in terms of getting players in the portal. But I don't know. We'll see. I think Eric getting a B+ here, it's fair. It is a rebuilding job. That's pretty clear. They won 2 games last year, 1 game. So, the floor is pretty low. The potential of they can do, their ceiling, it could be anything, right? If they get to 5-7, they'll be happy. 6-6, they'll be very happy. 8-4, extremely happy. They'll build you a statue for that. So, let's see if Eric Morris. Probably, outside of the bigger names, that's probably the one I'm interested about. This one and another one coming up here. Next up here, so that one, Eric Morris, B+. Next one, Cal Winningham, Michigan, A-. Solid hire, I think. Kyle is a very good head coach, very well documented on this show and other shows that he is one of the most accomplished head coaches currently in college football, one of the oldest ones in college football, one of the longest tenured ones in college football. A lot of success at Utah, multiple conferences too. This past year, Pac-12, Mountain West, or whatever conference you're in before that, multiple 10-win plus seasons, multiple conference championships. Probably one of the most accomplished coaches Michigan's hired in a long time. Definitely up there with list of accomplishments. Now, the A- is really a couple of things. One is the age thing, right? The fact that there were rumors, or not rumors, it's just that the feel was he was retiring. Turns out wasn't the case. It kind of makes you wonder. He is in his early 60s, I believe, Kyle. Makes you wonder how much longer he'll go. So that is a kind of an interesting, well, not a red flag, but just an interesting note to make a point of that. He's a little bit older. We'll just see how long he ends up going here. He may not be there his entire contract. I don't remember the total details of that, but I'm assuming it's like a 4 or 5 year deal. I would imagine he's not there for multiple contracts, but we'll see. So there's that. Now, the other issue, and it shouldn't be an issue, but it's going to, is the whole Brian Harsin comparison. You've seen this all. You saw this with Kellen DeBoer when he went to Bama. You're kind of seeing less of it with Kyle Whittingham, but I know it's probably there. Kyle Whittingham is not Brian Harsin. Brian Harsin had 0 head coaching experience at a P4 job as a head coach. Just did not work well at Auburn. Now, some of that was Auburn's fault. A lot of it was obviously his fault too. But there's very much so oil and water mixture. This one, to me, does not feel that way. At least in my opinion. I think a lot more folks like Josh Pate, guys over on Cover 3, they are more glowing about this hire than they were Brian Harsin. Again, nothing against Brian Harsin. He was a great coach at Boise State, did a very good job there of sustaining success there. But that whole Auburn mixture, this is an oil-water mixture. This one, to me, just doesn't feel that way. And I think Kyle is someone who has way more experience. Just call it what it is, way more experience in the P4. And I think for Michigan, they got someone who isn't an adult, unlike the previous head coach, both on the field and off the field, apparently. So that one, A-, solid hire. Now this one, last one here. The hiring cycle, I think this one's really underrated. I hear no one really talking about this. Like maybe like my show, Cover 3 and Josh Pate's show. But this one, Pat Fitzgerald, back in college football after he was wrongly, as it turns out, fired at Northwestern to Michigan State, replacing Jonathan Smith, who I thought was going to work out there. Did not. Disappointed. A+. A+. This guy, if you want to talk about Big Ten football coaches, you want to build your own coach in a lab, Pat Fitzgerald is that. No-nonsense coach. Physical, tough, and not the biggest fan of his offensive style, definitely more pro style, but in terms of his mentality, yeah, I like it. And I think he's done a lot of good things in the Big Ten, especially at Northwestern, his alma mater, a place that he brought to several Big Ten title game appearances, even some of the competitive in some of them. So he's had a lot of his history at Northwestern and going to a place like Michigan State which has way more resources, way more possibilities there to get funding and stuff, way bigger booster class, way better, and way more emphasis on football. That one already is an A+. Just a massive, just resume upgrade over Jonathan Smith. Nothing against Jonathan Smith either. I thought it was going to work out there, much like other folks, and I was wrong. And fairly disappointed there. I thought it was going to work out. Yes, they've, a lot of players they believe in the portal, but I think his first year, it can't is what it is. But I think going forward, though, in the future, that's going to be a tough team to go. Even year one, that's going to be a tough team to face. So, that one, A+. And that's it for the coaching, head coaching hiring grades for this cycle. Very interesting long list here. 30 minutes segment, too, by the way. Very long. Again, if you're new here, again, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Like I mentioned, we do college ball year-round. For the most part, again, the Extra Pod is where you find our other stuff we cover, like Marvel news, Star Wars news, Buccaneers stuff. And we'll bring those into the main show when we can, when it's warranted. But in terms of those type of topics, we have made some changes. Well, not like big changes, but just, cosmetic changes, if you will. In terms of cleaning some stuff up with that. Get some water real quick, and then we'll move really wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, a very cold day here in Jacksonville yet again. It is warming up there slightly, but I have it on good authority that it's going to get cold again, which is why there is a very small potential, very small. You see how close my fingers are. very small potential that we could see some snow somewhere here in the state of Florida, whether it's on the Gulf Coast or up here. Obviously not meaningful snow, just on the, just not getting the whole meteorology here, but the position of the low and where it's mostly offshore. Yeah, it's not a classic scenario where you could get snow up here, but it's not impossible to get some flakes, especially like Gulf Coast, northeastern Florida, southeastern Georgia, especially. Not impossible. UNC Bill Belichick, speaking of head coaching stuff, what's happening there? He's still the coach, Bill Belichick is. Last I heard, he's still the coach. Yes, no, there's the whole pro football thing, but we don't talk a whole lot of NFL on this show. That's for those other shows to discuss. We're talking about Belichick when it comes to college football. What's happening? What's going on? They were terrible last year. It was a oil and water mixture to begin with. There were rumors that he wasn't going to get fired last year. There were supposedly contingency plans, what was going to happen if they did let him go. There were reports or rumors, not rumors, that some possible talks of a reduced buyout. All that stuff happened, and then the coaching carousel just threw up on itself with all these big coaching hires. And this sort of got forgotten about. No one's talked about it. Even Josh Pate has been very silent about it, which is interesting. It makes me wonder who might even talk about it on this show, if he's doing a show. Last I checked, he was still in Georgia for show Tuesday. But anyway, we're talking about it. So what happened with Bill Belichick? All those rumors and stuff, what happened? I think the reason why he wasn't fired last year and why he's still the coach is pretty simple. Sort of similar to why he got hired. There's no organization there in Chapel Hill at all, period. Now, for basketball stuff, that's a whole other situation. Last I checked, they're doing fine. But in terms of the football stuff and the way the hire went down originally, same thing. There's no alignment. No one knows what's going on there. You have the one faction, Bubba Cunningham, and the more or less academic folks there at UNC, the school president, yada, yada, yada. They never wanted Bill Belichick to begin with. That's been very well documented. They did not want him. They wanted to go, actually, John Summerall. That was one of the names rumored that they wanted to go after. They did not. Fortunately for them, Florida has him. It's another cycle of Bill because that's who the boosters wanted. So now, after thinking about it in terms of why he didn't get fired, it totally makes sense. There's no alignment down there. We're up there. There's no clear goal as to what they believe North Carolina is. And I think what ended up happening, and I agree with Josh Pate, what UNC did with this hire of Bill Belichick, they did it to service his own personal goals, not their goals of the school, which is wrong. And that's like the worst way to handle a college football hire or any hire, period, especially in sports. Wrong way to do it. Like to hire someone's benefit, their legacy, and not yours, like that. Yeah, that's not like if that's the way you're making hires, that's the criteria you're using, then you shouldn't be making a hire. And unfortunately, there's been a power struggle up there, and it's been at least that's the way the hire was initially. And now with this whole, will he, won't he be fired? It's a sign, at least to me. I don't know if it's been really confirmed up there, but at least to me on the surface, there's no alignment up there, and that's why he's not been fired yet, and he should be. The longer he coaches there, the further and further UNC football gets away from even the decent teams in the ACC, like your NC States of the world, your Miami's the world, obviously, Florida State to a certain extent, Clemson to a certain extent, but especially the best teams right now are currently on Miami, Virginia, even Virginia Tech now, James Franklin. Like they are getting further and further distance from you, and the longer he's still there, and the longer that there's no more alignment or there's no alignment here in Chapel Hill, you become, instead of a nuisance for those teams, you just become a convenient speed bump for them. So again, I would just have to assume the reason why he's still there and why he's not been fired yet is because, well, one, because of his pride, and I think the folks there largely don't want to make him disgrace and whatnot, don't want to embarrass him, although that really shouldn't matter. But the real reason, in my opinion, is pretty clear. There's no alignment. There was no clear alignment as to what they want UNC football to be. Did they want it to be a celebrity-driven one, or they want it to be a results-driven one? It seems like to me they're going with the celebrity one versus the results one, and you're seeing the results of it. You're seeing we get losing in blowout fashion to TCU, losing in blowout fashion to Clemson, and losing, games to Cal on the road on a Friday night. So, yeah, the reason why he hasn't been fired, there's no alignment. There hasn't been alignment there for the past 2 years, it seems like. Yeah, Bill Belichick and UNC to the future there, I don't know. I mean, there's some folks who I know who are close to that program who follow it. I will eventually see them the next few months on a trip that we're taking. At least I'm taking here in May. I will be sure to bring it up. I will then, in turn, get that information to you when it's able to. So we'll see what they think. But at least on the surface, there's no alignment. At least in my opinion, there's no alignment there. And again, the longer he's still the coach, the longer he's the coach there, the longer or the more and more distance upper programs get for them. And they just become a speed bump. Next up here, spicy predictions here. Actually, the last segment here, actually. Revisiting spicy predictions. So how this works here, if you're new here to the show, we go through these. We did these last year, around like when we started doing these. At least we started getting submissions for these back around this time last year, maybe a little later, and we started giving our thoughts. These are essentially like bold predictions, but instead of making them bold, they're just spicy predictions, making it, having sort of sort of a different flavor, if you will. But how it works, again, sort of like bold predictions, right? Where you have the criteria is that the prediction is either mild, warm, hot, spicy. Warm means the prediction could happen, at least in my opinion. Warm is maybe. Hot, slightly unlikely. Spicy, just unlikely. And we rated these back over the spring and summer of last year. So now we're revisiting them. And we'll do this again eventually for this upcoming season. So let's go ahead and go through them here. The paper down here. There's nothing actually on here, but there might be some stuff on there. Who knows? Anyway, first one up here, South Carolina. I mean, it's here all from last year. First one you submitted here. So South Carolina has a top 10 offense. We put that in the mild category, so meaning we just didn't think that was, actually, let me double check here. Actually, that was in the mild category. We thought that could happen because of Lenore Sellers in particular. If we were wrong on that, that was a no for us. We got that one wrong. South Carolina, I don't have the stats in front of me. I doubt they were anywhere near the top 10. There were moments, if you will, like that. For example, the A&M game, right? The one that they very, very infamous now in South Carolina lore, blowing the huge lead. When their offense to me at times were close, borderline top 10, but not really. Very consistent, mainly due to injuries and just poor wide receiver play. One besides Nick Harbor, they had no help there, and they still don't, at least from what I can tell. So that one there, I put it at a mild. That was wrong. We were way off. Next one, Clemson plays Louisville in the ACC title game. We put that in the warm category. That one, let me see here. Was that correct? Yeah. So that was a warm in the maybe. This one we could probably put, I'm misspelling there. Probably in this sort of category. I'll say we sort of got this one right, just because Louisville had a better year than Clemson did. So actually, I guess we can change it to no. That didn't happen. Louisville was certainly more close than Clemson was. Clemson was just bad last year. In terms of Clemson standards recently, they were just bad last year. So that one was way off. Now, granted, in the preseason, we may have been on the right track. Though I'm pretty sure, didn't we have Georgia Tech in there and Clemson? Yeah, so we were wrong on that. So that was a no. I was going to make it a sort of, but then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. So that one, Clemson playing Louisville in the ACC title game. We get that in the warm category, meaning it could happen. We were wrong. This next one we got right. This prediction, at least our thinking about it. Washington State makes the playoff. We've had it as a spicy prediction that was not going to happen. We were correct. Now, they did make a bowl game, right? Washington State. Do some research here real quick. Let's see here. Go to schedule. Pretty sure they did go to a bowl game. I'd imagine they did, because I think let me see here. I can look this up. Not what I wanted. Okay, here we go. Yeah, they went 7-6. So yeah, I mean they they made it to a bowl game. They didn't necessarily make it to the playoff, but got on right. Spicy, sure. Next one here, we also got this one right. Indiana, national champion, it turns out Indiana, has a losing record. We had that as a hot. We did not think that was going to happen. We were correct on that. They won the whole thing. They didn't lose a game at all, period. They had like 2 close games or 3, I believe. Yeah. 3 close games of the entire year, and that was it. They won the national title. Kirk Cincinnati, Coach Sig. Even back then, even when back around summer and early fall camp. Even we here on this show were like, Kirk State having a losing record? Hell no. That wasn't going to happen. Next one here, Michigan State. This is a bowl game. Put down in the warm category. Like I said earlier, I thought Jonathan Smith and them would be a lot better, or would have been a lot better this past season. You're wrong on that. So I was a no. We had that in the warm category. No, they missed the bowl game again. We thought that was a bad take. It was not a bad take. I was actually correct. They went, was it 4-8 or 5-7? That doesn't matter. They still didn't go to one. Now this next one is a kind of a sort of one. Garrett Nussmeier wins the Heisman at LSU, but they missed the CFP. We had that in the warm category. So this one kind of hit. They missed the CFP. LSU did. Nussmeier did not win the Heisman. He did not come close. He was terrible because of the offensive line. The offensive line was perfect last year. And part of that, obviously, is Brian Kelly and them did not really venture that well, or did not even try to attempt to get a better offensive line for him. So there's that. So that one is we put that in the warm category. Got that sort of right. And this last one here, this one we got wrong. Ohio State starts 2-2 after the first 4 weeks. If you don't remember Ohio State's schedule, if I can pull it up here, they play Texas, and I believe they play Washington, in the first few weeks. If I'm not mistaken, yeah. So we thought this was going to happen. I felt very confident about this, and it turns out no. They only had didn't have a loss at all in the regular season. So they didn't have a loss until the postseason. So yeah, they had 2 losses, but they didn't come in the first 4 weeks. So that was a no for us. That in the ballot category, way off from that one. That's the show. Got it under 50 minutes. How about that? So again, a little bit more on the shorter side, but but this is the time of the year where we can, we don't have to go for over an hour. So how about that? So we will have, I think we'll have a Full Verticals Extra Pod tomorrow. We'll see. I think we should have one. We'll do it in the morning, and then we'll post it tomorrow afternoon. So be on the lookout for that. If it doesn't post, and we'll wait until next week. But that's it for the show. We have an interesting week, a very fascinating week. Of course, my birthday was yesterday. It was great. Nice to have a nice relaxing day there. But yeah, it's gonna be cold this weekend for us in Florida, and again, maybe some wintry stuff. We'll see. But I'll let you guys know on the socials what happens there. If I see any snow, I'll try to get some footage of it. We'll see. Probably won't though. But anyway, until Tuesday. Yeah, we should have a normal week next week. Until Tuesday, I think we'll have a normal week. Yeah, we should be fine. I think the week after, though, I don't think we'll have a Tuesday show. I don't think so. But next week should be normal. I'll let you guys know, obviously, on the socials if things change. But it should be normal next week. Until Tuesday. Enjoy the weekend. I know there's no NFL this week. Super Bowl is the week after. So I guess enjoy college basketball, I guess, or whatever folks do on Saturday or a weekend in February of no college football or any football in general. I mean, I guess, hey, luckily we have the college football video game to keep us happy. Of course, I'm still playing it. But anyway, enjoy your week. Enjoy the rest of the week. Until Tuesday, enjoy your weekend. And until then, we'll see you guys on the next stream.